Are we voicing?
Going down the chimney and forgetting his mask.
We will have to remember next year to provide him with one.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, sir.
This meeting of the Middlesex County School Board to order, and I'll ask for a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are in closed session.
Okay.
I do. Thank you. Okay. Well, good evening, everybody. I am standing in for our chairperson tonight. This is the annual meeting when our board selects its officers, and until it does, I'm presiding over the meeting. The board has been in closed session, and on behalf of the forthcoming chair, I will entertain a motion from the board to go out of closed session.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The board is officially back in open session. Pursuant to the Code of Virginia, the board discussed personnel matters, student matters, and legal matters during closed session. Matters discussed in closed session have been added to the consent agenda and other parts of the agenda as action and information items. Will members of the board certify that only lawful matters were discussed in closed session?
Mr. Reed?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Harrow?
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Socek?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dunkel?
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Schwartz?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Jordan. Will everyone please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance? The flag is indicated over here on the right side of the stage. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This time, I'd like to call the annual meeting to order. And our first order of business is electing a chairperson for the school board. I will entertain nominations from the board for this position at this time.
I'd like to nominate Claudia Socek, please.
Do you accept the nomination?
Yes, sir.
Nomination has been made. Any discussion or a second?
Second.
Nomination has been made and properly seconded. Any discussion at this time? All those in favor of Ms. Socek remaining as chairperson, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chairperson Socek, I delightfully hand the meeting back over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Kratz. I appreciate it. The floor is now open for election of vice chair. Is there nomination?
I nominate Dr. Shores.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The floor is open for nomination for clerk.
Nominate Ms. Peggy Jordan.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The floor is open for election of deputy clerk. You will do this to me every time.
I nominate Karen Murphy.
Is there a second?
I second that motion.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, we need to determine a time, a place, and date for our regular meetings. During COVID, we've been meeting here. Do we want to continue until maybe there is a more appropriate time to return to the courthouse? What is your pleasure?
I'd like to make a motion that right now we remain, we keep on having our meetings here until there's a break and things change a little bit.
Okay. So the time and the place, the time would be 7 p.m.
Yes.
and like St. Clair Walker Middle School Auditorium, and the date would be the second Monday of each month. All right, I hear that in the form of a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Okay, committee assignments. Are we agreed to retain the current committees we're on? Dr. Shores, Governor's School?
Governor's School, I'd be glad to.
Okay. Mr. Goforth, will you remain with Bridging Communities?
Yes.
Okay. You want to stay with the task force? You want to stay with WHRO?
Yep.
All right, I'll stay with the regional SPED. And then we have the Facilities Committee. Mr. Harrow, Dr. Shores, you want to remain on the Facilities Committee?
Fine.
Okay. And expenditures review. Mr. Goforth, you want to continue to do that?
Sure.
Okay. So I guess that covers them all.
Except for the
Finance.
Middlesex Foundation.
The Middlesex Foundation, all right, and the Finance Committee.
Yes.
Mr. Goforth, will you
Yes.
consider?
I'm
Okay, you and I'll continue that. Okay, then. All right, so all of that, all the annual business is concluded at this time. Let's move on to recognitions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Sochek, and members of the board, members of the public who are here. I'm going to remove this a little bit just to make sure you can hear me. We're delighted to have some guests with us tonight who are integral partners in our mission, serving the students and families of this great community. And I'm going to I really want to just call attention to the connection that we have with the Middlesex Rotary Club. It's a deepening connection. It's one that we have been in the past couple of years really exploring ways that we can expand our partnership together. And I would thank the folks that are here tonight, as well as some of the other members of the Rotary Club, for initiating those discussions. And we're seeing some of the fruit of that tonight. You remember not that long ago, representatives from the Rotary were here donating thousands of dollars in grant monies that they had obtained on our behalf in order for us to purchase medical supplies for each of the school related to screening and keeping the environment safe. Well, tonight, we have folks that are here, as well as the principal of the elementary school, Mrs. Daniel, and not new teacher to Middlesex Elementary, but new to the Kids First program, preschool program, Kristen Connolly is with us as well. And so I really want to hand the recognition portion of this over to Mrs. Daniel, and to whatever extent she's going to involve other people, I'm going to kind of leave that up to her. But if you come to the microphone, I'll give you this mic right here, and we'll tell a little bit of the story of this partnership. And then they, I think, are going to actually, they're going to recognize us. So. Put this, set it on there.
Then you're done. That would be great there. Okay, let's see. So as many of our board members probably are aware and recall, as well as some of our community members, several years ago, we had a program that we were approached about, the Kids First program, which is a 3-year-old program to help support some of our children that we were servicing 4-year-olds, but we did not have an opportunity to service any 3-year-olds. So at that time, we welcomed in a 3-year-old classroom that services 12 children. This year, we continue to have a full slot of 12 children, and then some who have been able to begin to integrate into some of our 4-year-old programs. And along with that, the Rotary has been there throughout the entire process. So they have been very generous in their time and monetary donations to support the needs of the children. Typically in a traditional school year, they would have already been into the classroom every single week. Part of that is connecting with the children, helping to connect with the families. So we are extremely appreciative of your continued involvement. And even though we haven't been in a situation this year when we've been able to have them into the building, they've continued to reach out to us and offer that support and provide to our children and our families as well as to our teacher. So I'd ask you all to come forward. I don't know that it's on either.
It's on.
Okay.
So Stan Koloff is one of the members who is very active in our Kids First program as well as throughout the school. And I know they're here tonight as well to provide a generous donation to the school. So I wanted to turn it over to you to speak a little bit about that.
Thank you. Well, the Kids First program was something we got involved with back in 2017. And we established a fundraising effort, something that we became a very important part of our fundraising activities, a progressive dinner. And the progressive dinner involved 10 host homes and a number of people attending each one of those host homes and so forth. And it was a fundraiser specifically for the Kids First program. And it caught on big time. All of the host families said, well, let's do it again next year. It was a great time, but they also realized it was serving a great program as well and a great need, which was recognized by all of the participants. Well, that has continued up and through 2019. And of course, we got into the COVID situation, so we weren't able to hold that fundraiser this past year. But it's something that's been very dear to our heart. As Danielle mentioned, our involvement with the kids, being able to sit in with the classroom from time to time and see how they progress over the course of the year is just very heartwarming. It's a program that means a great deal. It's one of our signature programs within the Middlesex Rotary Club. And one of the progressive dinners, the most recent one, we had some very, very generous donors. And I'm going to ask Clara Burrow to come forward here, if she would, and make a presentation of the check for this year, a check for $3,000, which she has provided, something we're very happy to provide. Right.
Thank you, because this is important to me. I mean, y'all are giving me a gift, being able to do this, I promise you. I was one of those little kids at one time, and somebody helped us. So, you know, we got to help each other. And it's just, from what I've heard, it's fabulous. And I know y'all work very hard at it. So thank you.
We're going to have a picture here.
Yes.
Yes.
One more photograph.
Sure.
Where do you want everybody? Right there is fine.
Well,
I'm gonna try this one.
Sure. No, I might be blocking Clara.
You're not blocking me. Just come on.
One more. Thank you so much.
See, we can't tell what's
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Once again, thank you all so much. It means so much to you, but it really is generous, and we appreciate appreciate so much your continued support of this program.
Well, we're very happy to do it,
Thank
and we will continue, and we just love doing what we do, and our support for the schools is also a very important part of our service outreach to the community.
Thank you. Thank you for coming this evening. One other, any more, Dr. Betts?
No, ma'am.
Okay. One other thing I'd like to make mention of is the passing of Walter Allen Harrow. And for those of you who don't know, Walter Allen was, the obituary lists a lot of things, but he was also principal of Middlesex High School. Happened to be principal when I was at Middlesex High School. And he was principal during the desegregation of schools. And his leadership was always filled with grace and concern for all of our students. I remember it very well. And when I was offered my first teaching job, it was out of my field. I was a high school history teacher, and back then it was a male position because they coached and taught history. So I was offered in Hanover County a second grade position and a fifth and sixth grade math position. I was a history major, but anyway, so I called him and I said, what should I do? And he asked me if I wanted to tie shoes. And I went, no. And he goes, teach math. So I did. But he was always there for any of us to call on at any time. It's really a passing of an age for us in Middlesex education. And I know Mr. Goforth also had a comment about.
Yeah, I was mentored, I guess, by Walter Allen when he was superintendent in Essex, and I became superintendent here in Middlesex. One thing, he called me up there and said, Jim, let me show you what we're doing as far as computers and budget and so forth. And at that time, we were doing everything by hand. After he demonstrated that to me, I came back and found $10,000 in the budget and bought our first, computer for the central office and automated our budget and accounting system. He also was instrumental in getting me on a state advisory committee, which I thoroughly enjoyed. So I really appreciated his efforts to help me out.
All right. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? I didn't see any. Am I missing them? Just the one finance. Okay. Is there a motion to approve that addition of finance information?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions about this addition? All right. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, public announcements. January the 18th, Martin Luther King holiday, the school division will be closed. January the 21st is the end of 9-week grading period. January the 22nd, the staff professional day that no students will report. January the 29th, report cards will be issued. And February the 8th, the next school board meeting at St. Clair Walker Middle School in the auditorium at 7 p.m. The floor is open for public comments. Hearing none and seeing no movement, I will close the floor for public comments. Board members, any reports at this time?
No comment from the governor's score. I haven't talked to anybody.
Okay, all must be well.
Bridget Communities meets this Thursday, so I'll have something next month.
Okay, all right. Anybody else?
WHO, everything's virtual.
Yes.
We should be having something soon, would we, Dr. S?
And the regional SPED meeting is the end of the month, so I'll have a report next month also. All right. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
I'll take one of those as a second. Any questions about it? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. All right, Dr. Gretz, we have some appropriations here that we need to deal with.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If you look at page 22 of your board packet, I'll take you through each of these appropriations. The first is, you remember each year we have the opportunity to apply for funding to support school security upgrades, infrastructure upgrades. And so this is taking our most recent award of not quite $25,000 that's going to support additional cameras, surveillance cameras, as well as replacing some of the handheld radios that are in use at the high school. This is already, all of these, I should tell you, have already been to the supervisors and approved by the supervisors. So this is appropriating that money from that state account for us to use. The next is on page 24. This is a adjustment that was made to one of the grants that we received through the State CARES Act. You remember there were essentially 3 disbursements of those funds. One of them involved grant funds to support internet, broadband, connectivity for students. It was called the Vision Grant. And we were awarded some money through the Vision Grant, I think $10,000. And then the federal government made a revision and dispersed more money to the state. And this was our portion of that additional funding. And this is going to go to, we're going to use this to support Chromebooks that we purchased for students to use while they're remote. And, you know, I'm sorry, I reversed those. What did I just do, Ms. Murray?
The one you were speaking of on page 24 is actually for the assessment grant.
Oh, that's right, that's right. I'm so sorry.
The back testing.
Yep. We had an opportunity, so everything I just said about the Vision Grant is for this, this next one. The $8,000 this is grant money that we were able to pursue and get that could be used to support administration of our growth testing that we do, the MAP test in reading and math. So kudos to Mr. Dunkel and his folks for going after this. We were going to have to do that test anyway and support it locally. Now we can apply this additional grant funding to support it. Sorry about that confusion. And then finally, the final one is there is a national certification that I think about 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago was begun, where teachers could pursue this certification. It's a very, very involved process. And we, for the first time, at least in my tenure, have a teacher with the National Board certification working for us. The state provides an annual stipend bonus for teachers with this certification. So the state is providing these funds for us to award to that teacher, and this is asking you to appropriate those monies for us to do so.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Is there a motion to approve these 4 appropriations?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any questions? Any further explanation needed about these? If not, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. All right, we have an action item on the budget calendar.
Board members, we put this on the agenda thinking that we may have revisions to the original draft that we shared with you a couple of months ago to the budget calendar. As we've worked with the county, we realized that really we don't have any revisions. The one that I was anticipating was the joint meeting. We still don't have a date or a time set for that. So I really don't need to ask the board to act on this at all. We'll just, hopefully in the next meeting after our budget finance subcommittee, we'll be able to coalesce that date and time and figure out how we want to do that. So we can move on to the next item.
Okay. The school board policy revision on second reading.
Thank you. So you remember we, at the advice of the school board attorney, we revised the grievance policy. You've seen this at first reading. Nothing's changed from it since then. I still recommend that you adopt it. And so if you have any questions about it or any discussions, certainly we'll entertain them. Otherwise, I would ask you to approve this.
Move we approve it on second reading.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion about this? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. The, the calendar updates.
This is the school calendar.
Yes.
So board members, with the environment that we're in, with the hybrid model and the way we have adjusted our schedule, and now the way students are coming 2 days a week in 2 different cohorts, we do not have a need with the built-in Wednesdays. We don't have a need for the early release days that we had built into this calendar to support professional development. It doesn't mean we're not doing the professional development. We don't need these early release days to get it done. So I would ask you to amend the calendar to remove those 3 days, February 12th, March 12th, and April 30th. And those would just become regular parts of our calendar. Any questions you have for me on that?
Do I hear a motion to approve the revised school calendar for this year, the remainder of 21?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions about this? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. And now we have the code of conduct from the VSBA Code of Conduct for school board members. And we are to, I know you all are all familiar with this. It's something that we do annually. I would entertain a motion to approve this from a board member. It's on page 35. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
So
Move
moved.
we approve the VSBA code of conduct?
Yes. For the school board members. Yes. So we've got a motion and a second from Mr. Reed.
Yes.
Are there any questions or comments about this? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
And this applies to the school clerk as well?
The school clerk has a separate one,
Yes, second page.
VSB Code of
Okay,
Conduct
all
for
right.
school board clerks.
I got you. I understand.
Right. And Ms. Jordan, are we supposed to pass that for you? Okay. On page 36, there is a VSB Code of Conduct for school board clerks. Is there a motion to approve?
So, second?
Second. Anyone have a question about this? Our clerks are outstanding, so there's no problem with them abiding by this. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right, now we get to the fun things. Instructional report. Dr. Gretz and Dr. Seitz.
Okay, thank you, board members. When we initially included an instructional update, we had, Dr. Seitz and I had participated in a meeting where we learned about a revision that the Department of Health had made to its guidance for schools. I don't know if you can hear me. And so we were in a meeting with other superintendents across the state. The Department of Education and the Department of Health were presenting the revised guidelines to us. And while they didn't necessarily have an implication that would change what we were doing, it did offer some new, and I would say maybe scientific, from the Department of Health, support and evidence for the model that we've been pursuing. And we were hoping to be able to present in detail that report to you. And you might remember, so the meeting that we participated in, the information was shared with us was really embargoed the day before what was to be a press release by the governor, where he would, I think, release that information publicly. And then sometime during that 24 hours, the information about the schools was shifted. And what actually happened in that press release, if you listen to it, it was really about the rollout of the vaccination. So the information that we really wanted to share with you in this agenda item that was embargoed for 24 hours, really still kind of embargoed, what I'd like to do is just anecdotally share really where we feel like we are and where we're headed. I had lengthy conversations with our principals, and we've been meeting as a team regularly for the last several months. And basically where we are, in students that are coming for in-person learning are continuing to see exponential gains, increases, and I think that their experience is improving to different degrees, but almost invariably the students that are coming to school are experiencing positive progress academically. The students who are fully virtual, some of them are making good progress as well, and they're able to connect. Some of them are able to connect really well, but they're not making great progress. And it's not because they're not able to connect. And then a much smaller group of fully virtual students, frankly, remain now 80 some days into the school year completely disengaged from us. We've not been able to connect with them. We've not been able to, we've involved the school social worker, we've made home visits, their phone calls, and we just simply can't. This is a small group of students, but it's significant enough that I want to bring it to your attention. The students who are connected and the family is engaged with us, the fully virtual students, and that's the majority of the fully virtual students. We're able to find creative solutions to help those students make progress, even the ones that are struggling. We're able to make the connection, and we're able to work with the family to try to navigate the different decision points that would help those things move along. The students, think of how to articulate this well. When you have students that are fully remote, the ownership that the school can take over the academic progress is restricted to the extent to which the school is allowed to connect with the student, if that makes sense. When the students are coming to us, even with mitigating factors at home, learning disabilities, things that are completely out of our control, we still own 100% of the responsibility for learning, for progress. And we can maintain that responsibility and that ownership with the fully virtual students where there's a partnership and a connection. With the students where we're not able to have that partnership with the families, we're seeing that progress, the progress isn't there. And the gaps, I think, that were there before this happened are widening in those circumstances. And we're continuing to brainstorm and try to find ways to make those connections. But at the end of the day, there's only so much that we have in our control. I don't want you to feel like I'm painting a dark picture. I want to be very transparent and honest about that with anybody who's listening. This is the environment we're in, and this is how we're trying to address it. The data that we presented to you before you made the decision to offer the hybrid back in the fall, in early October, we're right now administering those assessments again. So I really don't have standardized, quantified measurements that I can share with you in this meeting anyway on behalf of learning that could be generalized across populations. We administered the PALS test. Those results were very insightful to us, and you were able to use those to make a decision. We can't measure progress until we have this next disbursement of those administrations, and they're happening now. So PALS, that's the reading assessment, the kindergarten readiness tool that we'll have another round of that's, I think, already begun before the holiday, didn't it? Spring, okay, I'm sorry. So Dreambox Math, which is a new program that we're implementing that's going to give real-time data connected to the standards as well as sorted by lesson. So I do think that probably next month we'll be able to share some insights that we've gotten from analyzing that data, but we just don't have it standardized at this time. at this meeting. What I'll share with you is that we're trying at each school to put some teams together to really think about how curriculum can be adapted, how pacing can be adjusted, how content within curriculum can be addressed flexibly, because we know that there were gaps that existed before the shutdown. We know that, to give very simple examples, we know that students were in homes where they weren't read to. They're still in homes where they aren't read to. And we, in many cases, with those most at-risk students right now, have limited access, in some cases, no access, to ameliorate those gaps. So we're anticipating them, and we're doing our best to find creative ways to measure learning so that we can be prepared to do what I think we know is going to have to be very, very creative and flexible when it comes to wrapping up this school year and thinking about what's next for the next school year. And is there anything, Dr. Seitz, from your perspective, or we do have a principal here that you're more than welcome to share? I don't want to put either of you on the spot. I mean, we are, we're all really just breathing and living and working this all the time to be creative. But, my intention was really to walk you through the implications for schools that were being rolled out at the governing level. We don't have those now, so I just wanted to give you an anecdotal picture of what we're working on. Most of the students that we're working with are seeing progress. And again, the ones that are in person are invariably seeing really good progress. But we're really trying to make sure that our assessments give us really good data that we can use. And that's tough to do when you don't have all of your students, and especially some of your most at-risk students, you don't have access to them. It's hard to measure. So,
Dr. Rich.
Yes, sir.
River Counties is initiating, realizing that this is a problem. Have you heard about that at all?
I've been in connection with River Counties. I don't know specifically what you're talking about, but they definitely have, they've met with me twice.
Right. Well, just recently, they've started another initiative to try to get a learning center type environment going in different places within the counties. They are really working hard with Northumberland and Lancaster, and are more than willing to work with us if there's anything we feel that they can help. Yeah. Monetarily or possibly volunteers. That's where they run into a little bit of a problem, is finding volunteers for these learning centers. But they're using the churches. Some churches are participating. There are some participation going on, and it seems to be helping. Their main concern was the inability for students to be able to get to the internet. So if there's anything that you could think that would could benefit us in any way, they're more than willing to help. Yeah.
I need to reach back out to them and make sure. My disposition towards that was that we were really on their radar to do for whatever the next step was.
And that's where they are.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we definitely will be able to partner with them on that.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Dr. Seitz, or Ms. Janie, tell us how excited the kids are to be in school.
They, so when we actually got ready to go for the winter break, we had several days, we had several of them asking for us to assure them that we weren't shutting down again, that they were coming back after winter break. So typically when we go to winter break, we do have quite a handful of kids that are not excited about those breaks. They'd rather be at school and stay in the routine. And we found this year it's a significant number that were anxious. And so in a traditional setting, you typically have some behaviors too that occur during the school day. We're not experiencing any of that. They really are excited to be there. And even our kids who are engaging virtually, just are having the best time. We still are able to join virtual classes, and I was in several today, and they're so excited to be there, so excited to connect with their teacher. We've definitely seen an increase in virtual participation from the Q1.
Mhm.
And I think what happened was we had children who came in and spent some time with their teacher. And then family circumstances, they ended up going virtual because that's what met their family safety needs at that time. And those kids have been more engaged than they were that first quarter, which I think speaks volumes to what we've said for years, the relationship piece with our families and our kids. Just getting to those families that we just cannot connect with.
Thank you, Christine. Dr. Seitz, anything else? Okay, thank you. Okay. Let's see, all right. BHSL athletic update, anything, Dr. Krebs?
Well, I'll just tell you where we are as a leadership team discussing this issue, and the board, if there any direction you'd like to give us or any comments you'd like to make, questions, anything. This decision about the forthcoming season, which is actually going to be the fall sports season. You remember the VHSL made the decision to abbreviate them, to start with winter. Fall starts February 15th. So we don't have to make a decision about fall sports today, but we probably do pretty quickly need to decide what we're going to do. And so I've been meeting with regional counterparts, certainly, with the other divisions around us, just to get a feel for where they are. And interestingly, we're one of the few school divisions, at least in our district, that is still hybrid, or at least still doing in-person learning without an extended break, and many of them just haven't returned to in-person learning. And so it's ironic when I think about how this has developed. Right before the holiday, we were one of the few that made the decision, it really doesn't make sense to do athletics if we can't have kids do social studies when the athletics involve such close contact, like wrestling and basketball, and there's no safety mitigations that can be put in. Whereas a lot of our counterparts were moving forward with those. Since that time over the holiday, that's kind of reversed. A lot of the school divisions around us are still making the decision to even offer in-person learning, and they really haven't gotten to what they're going to do with athletics because they're wrestling with that. We've been working very closely, as you know, with our health district, with Dr. Williams, the Department of Health, and he continues to have confidence in the model that we're implementing. And so we're really in a good position to focus on the decision about athletics because our decision to be in school is made. So nothing has really changed in terms of the environment from the first time that you as a board considered athletics. What's different now are the sports. The sports are different. When we were considering allowing students to do wrestling and basketball in this environment, and now today with the next round of sports, we're talking about golf, volleyball, football, and cross country. And so the conversations that we've had internally really are around if the safety mitigations of 6 feet and masks can really be implemented with fidelity, we would like to offer students the opportunity to participate in sports. Cross country, we're able to do that. Golf, we're obviously able to do that. Volleyball, the way it has been played up to this point, we've been seeing examples of this, and I'm sure you have. There's travel clubs that have been participating. They're able to wear their masks. They really don't have a lot of physical contact, and certainly not with the opposing team. So we think that the safety is there for those 3 sports. And there are some creative ways that the VHSL has mapped out how you can offer football. The concern that we have had internally about football is really less about the ability to the safety and more about the fact that our team is young. It was young a couple of years ago, so it's a growing team. They're young players. We have a lot of people who are interested in football kids at the high school who have not played, so underclassmen. And they frankly are not physically in condition to play, especially given it's an abbreviated season and abbreviated practice time. And the coaching staff frankly feels like we might be putting kids in a situation that's not safe, not because of the spread of the virus, but because of the physical condition of the students that just haven't had the opportunity to do physical conditioning and to practice. So what we're actually thinking, and I'd love to get your feedback on this, is that we would offer students the ability to participate in those three sports, volleyball, golf, and cross country. And instead of doing a football season, that we would offer those interested in football and other athletes who aren't otherwise already on a sport or a team, the opportunity to do a conditioning program that would be run by the football coaching staff to enable students to, if they really wanted to be serious about this, and we would want to move forward given, considerations that were favorable for us, that students could really get in shape and condition for a strong spring season. None of these decisions have been made. This is just where our thinking at the high school with the athletic director, high school administration, and again, just internally and talking to Dr. Williams, this is what we feel like we'd like to do. We certainly recognize the importance of giving students the ability to do these things, miss them terribly. And if we are able to do one safely and not the other, I'm not in favor of saying we're not going to do any of them. We'll do the ones that we can do safely. And so that kind of an approach really makes sense to me. I would support it. And I think we'd be able to do it in a way that was, we maintain the safety disciplines that we need to and still give students the ability to expand even just a little bit of the opportunity that they have through our schools with sports. There's several questions that I can't answer today. I have no idea what other school divisions are going to do because, like I said, most of them are behind. Don't know what the schedule would look like. I have no idea what teams would be there for us to play.
When you say abbreviated season, though, you're talking about 6 weeks, February through March, or what are you talking about?
It's February 15th through May 1st with the first.
So when's baseball?
Baseball is April 12th through June 26th.
So it goes after, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So they're going to be playing baseball after school.
Yeah, it looks like it, yeah.
Yeah.
Which was a plan originally, I think.
So, the questions we think about, like I said, with the one thing that I will tell you that we, Dr. Seitz and I both really had affirmed for us when we went through that session hearing about the Department of Health's revisions, the importance of the 6 feet and the masks, especially the 6 feet, both from a pragmatic ability to avoid widespread quarantine when there is an exposure, and also just limiting the spread of germs. So can social distance be maintained? Can masks safely be worn? Is the cleaning protocol required feasible? The cleaning protocol, I will tell you, that's in the return to participation document that was produced by the VHSL. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but I don't know that it's feasible. The cleaning that would have to be done of all of the equipment before practice, after practice. Transportation is a big factor for us because of the social distancing. So transporting, even just deciding if we do move forward, would we be able to support more than just the varsity with our transportation needs, as well as the gym needs and the different facilities. I don't know that. We'd have to work through that. It may be that we'd have to start this first season if we do this on a little bit of a smaller basis. Again, what other teams are going to be participating? I don't know that. And a big question that our coaching staff brought to us, their big concern, the physical condition of athletes. There are a lot of students who, frankly, if they aren't playing on a recreational club or a travel club, or their parents aren't, the family isn't encouraging. A lot of our athletes have not been they've been somewhat sedentary. And so there's a concern there. But I do think that there are kids and parents who have expressed to us the desire for students to have the physical outlet. And so the conditioning program would allow for that. And I think would be a very healthy thing for our students. So I'll stop there. And any questions, comments that you have?
If we were to have any athletics, I know spectators. Right now, they're not allowing spectators or a very minimal spectator.
Yeah.
Congregation. So where would that stand?
We'd have to decide that. But we haven't made that decision, but we'd have to decide. It definitely would be very limited. We could do streaming. We have the capability to enable families to watch virtually through like a YouTube link. But in terms of how many people would be allowed in, whether visiting spectators would be allowed in, I think we'd have to hash through all of those decisions to decide. And obviously, we'd comply with the mandates that the governor put in. But I think there are a lot of schools who, in their decision-making, have gone above and beyond that and just said, I know of one that said one family member per student. Some have said no spectators. That part will look dramatically different than I think anybody's accustomed to.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Dr. Brooks?
So I guess the takeaway, I want you to be aware that we as a team are trying to move forward with what I just said. If anybody has any concerns about that, please let me know, or any direction for us, let me know.
Okay. Thank you. And then we have the FY22 budget discussion.
I'm actually going to move down here for that so that I can see the slides.
Okay.
You need a microphone down there?
I will, yeah. I'll grab that, Dr. Short. Is that okay? Is your mic? Okay. So typically this time of the year, we present, if you need to move around to see this, I know it's kind of an awkward setup for you when you're right under it. Feel free to move, or if you even want to just come out here. Typically at this board meeting, I would be presenting you some pretty detailed revenue and expenditure projections, trend data. I'd give you some pie graphs, and they're all related to the governor's proposal, which he made on the 16th of December. Because the environment we're in is a little bit more uncertain, I just didn't feel like it would be helpful to give you all that tentative data. We'll do that at the next meeting when we've had an opportunity to see how the governor's proposal is processing through the different ways that it does. So Steve, you can go ahead. Just a reminder, these variables for the upcoming budget, student enrollment continues to be a difficult point of contention across the state. Enrollment in all school divisions, all 136 of them, is down related to the pandemic, the impact of the pandemic. The governor proposed keeping divisions whole using the budgeted ADM. Now, Mrs. Murray and I were in an all-day finance seminar today, And we learned that actually the governor's proposal is not the average daily membership that we budgeted. It actually is the average daily membership that is populated through the state calculation tool, which is always lower. So that's not as good a news as it maybe looked before this morning. But the governor is trying to give some relief to local school divisions to address the fact that none of us are financially prepared to handle huge drops and surprises in enrollment in the spring based on what we budgeted 12 months earlier. The at-risk add-on, he proposed to maintain the increase in the first year of the biennial budget to the cap of 26%. So that's an additional $50,000 for us if his budget comes through. Stop me on any of these. I'll just kind of go pretty quickly. So the governor's proposing funding an increased counselor ratio through the SOQs. Now, you know, a couple years ago, we made the decision to support a full-time counselor in this middle school because we were committed to it and believed that it was the right thing to do. We received zero funding from the state for that. So this would provide financial support. It would go through the filter of our local composite index, but we would get some money to fund that. Okay, Steve? Insurance premiums. We've had, as we've monitored what's happening with insurance, you remember just in the four, this is the fifth budget I'll be doing with you here. In those four, two of them were pretty rough and two of them were okay in terms of our insurance premiums. They went up double digits my first 2 years here. I think held their own the third year, and last year actually went down a little bit. So this year, we were really interested to see what's going to happen with this. We had 3 really good quarters. The most recent one was pretty bad. Our conservative estimate and what we've built into the model that we're going to share with you tonight is an increase of 2%, which I would propose is something you can talk about. I would propose not passing that 2% on to our employees, but our absorbing that somehow through the budget. I'll be delighted and not really shocked if it's less than 2%. But I'd rather give you good news later than give it to you now and take it back. So that's our conservative estimate. And just a reminder, this forthcoming budget will be the first of the next biennial budget. VRS is going to remain the same, so no increases there. And then, of course, our composite index, which is 0.6. So for every dollar we get from the state, we locally, the Middlesex community needs to come up with 60 cents, and we get 40 cents from the state to support every dollar spent on education. What that looks like. Okay, Steve? Just a quick reminder, I won't read all these to you. We did 3, the board approved 3 budget priorities that we continue to use. The first one is supporting and developing staff. You can just kind of roll through these, Steve, these 3. The second one, equitable programming and thinking about, these are all the different things that we talked about supporting and the needs. You remember we did a needs assessment and a community assessment asking for feedback on the budget. And the third, stewardship and safety. The big one there, of course, thinking about our capital upgrades. Okay, Steve? You can go back one. Yeah, so for tonight, what I want to bring you is basically some consideration if there's discussion and questions that you have about these 3 main areas. The first would be compensation. You remember that we did a salary study with the county a few years ago, and so we have an official recommendation from the Springstead group. We implemented just a small portion of that recommendation 3 years ago. And so, so I'd like to bring you some information about what it would cost to take another chunk out of that recommendation, increasing the scales. We have some support scales that were inordinately off. And when we did our 7, I'll talk about this here in a few minutes, but there's some support scales that are discriminately low that we need to think about. And then, of course, we've talked here about adjusting the psychologist pay. We're not able to hire a psychologist. That's been open for a couple of years, and so we propose moving that to the higher scale. And then we'll look at early childhood. You know that we now have 6 programs, 6 early childhood programs, which is a little bit unheard of for a division our size. And so I'd like to bring you some information about what it would cost to hire a part-time coordinator to administer that program. And then the big part of the capital improvement discussion has been actually trying to get serious with the county and our community about a renovation to the high school. Okay, so this is just some data to share with you. Each year we try to share this information. So if you go across the top, you'll see our regional partners. The second row shows the tax rate in each of those communities, just for you to have. And then the third is the local composite index. So remember with that number, if you look at Gloucester, 0.38. So for every dollar that the state spends on education in Gloucester, Gloucester needs to come up with a little less than 40 cents and they get 60 cents. That's how you read that. So these are the steps of the teacher salary scale. I've chunked them up here because they're very difficult to read. At the bottom is the aggregate number for each one of those districts. The lowest salary at any given step is yellow and the highest is pink. And then I'll show you at the end of a couple of slides where we rank in all. I'll just tell you, we've gone over the past couple of years when we did our large salary increase a few years ago in fiscal 19. We were in the top 3 of every scale, or every step. And so we're still in the top 5, I think 6 in a couple, but generally we've dropped a little bit in competitiveness, but not dramatically. Okay, Steve. Okay, so those were steps 0 through 10. These are the mid-range steps through 20. Same thing. I'll give you a second to look at it, but so again, the aggregate scale number is at the bottom. Okay, Steve. And then finally, the top steps from 21 to 30. You can see there. And you can certainly take this after the meeting and study it in more detail. And we'll send this out to the community if there's interest. Okay. All right, so when Springstead did their salary study in 18, and we took action on it in fiscal 19, they found that we were, at the time, you remember, we were dead last in the region in the teacher salary scale at every single step. And so they did an exhaustive review of all of our salary classifications. They did the same thing with the sheriff, the social services, and the county agencies. So they gave us basically 3 options that they recommended for us to do what they were recommending, ranging from a very aggressive one-time adjustment and then a phased-in approach to do it over 3 years, understanding that every year inflation happens, the numbers get a little bit far off. And so our recommendation to the county was for us to, you can go ahead, Steve, was for us to choose that third one. Actually, everybody coalesced the third one, which was going to be a phased-in approach. And you can see the average increase was just under 17, well, just over 16%. With what it was going to take to do something like that, and through our Budget and Finance Committee meetings, you remember we had lots and lots of discussions, we proposed that we do 7. And so we implemented, you can go ahead, Steve, we implemented a 7% increase. So the recommendation was 16.8, either all at once or 3-year increments. Everybody thought the 3-year increments. It was 14.28. These are averages. Because remember, each one of those steps was different, but the average recommendation for a teacher increase to that scale was 14.2%. 14.8 for administrators, 14.9 for specialists, almost 7% for what they classified as support one. Springstead's classifications are different than the ones we have on our scale, so don't let that confuse you. And then 34%, this is where I was saying earlier, some of our support positions were so dramatically far below the regional competitive average. And then we were going to adjust from a scale that basically, prior to that, you might remember we had 36 steps. So we adjusted that back down to 30, so you reach the top higher, faster, excuse me. And then correcting years of experience. We had several places that just didn't match. So we needed to clean all that up. So when we, go ahead, Steve, when we did our 7%, this is what actually happened. We corrected the steps that year. We aligned the experience to steps and got all that clean. And then we did an average 7% across the board for all scales. But if you remember, one of those support recommendations was almost 35% below. So the 7% across the board maintained that some of those scales were still discriminately low, and they've continued to get discriminately low. And we have seen, we knew that, we saw it on paper. We were very thankful to be able to give a significant increase of 7% across the board, no questions asked. But when we've gone to hire a couple of those positions that happen to have vacated, we realize that we don't have a prayer of hiring some of those positions at that 34% below competitive market value without addressing those. So these are some of the things we've been working on as we think about the budget for next year. Just to remind you, a couple of years ago, we had a mandatory increase in our VRS, in what we pay on behalf of employees of 2%. We had to come up with that. Our premiums went up 11%, I think 9% the year before. So we had some really healthy, significant hits to our expenditures that we didn't have any way to address other than just to cough it up. Okay, Steve? So these were our scale adjustments over the past couple of years. The first installment of the Springstead recommendation was in fiscal 19. We did the 7%. And then the next fiscal year, we did a 1% increase to all scales. And then last year, we were not able to increase them at all. So in communicating with the county, and I don't want to give you the impression that the county has made any kind of decision, and when I say county, I mean my conversations with Matt Walker, and with the Sheriff's Department, there's interest in at least exploring what it would cost to do that next installment, if you will, that next portion of the Springstead recommendation before we get too far away. We're already 3 years away from it. And every year that goes by, inflation causes the gap to increase. And so there was great commitment on behalf of the governing body that year to make sure that we did this in 3 years. And the remaining 2 years, you can see we really didn't do it. That's not me faulting anybody for anything. We've been going through a challenging circumstance, but just factually understanding our initial commitment was to try to bring those recommendations to fruition, and we've not done that. So I'm saying proposal. It's really not even a proposal. I'm just bringing you some information and some numbers for you to understand. If we were to do a 4% increase to the scales plus a step adjustment for us, and that comes from the county thinking about and the sheriff thinking about a 5% increase across the board. So for us to do 5, it really means everybody advances up a step and we do 4. So we'll bring you that information here in just a couple slides. Okay, Steve? This is one of the positions, as you know, we have a mechanic position open. And this is one of the ones that we found was dramatically below market value. And at the current hiring range of $22,000 on the front end for a max after 30 years of experience at $32,000, we have found that we are not going to find a bus mechanic. And none of the scales around us are anything like that. So we are recommending changing that scale that position is on to start at the Springstead recommendation. And what we have found in our neighboring counties is the starting salary of $38,000. There's some considerations around that that we'd have to work through. So again, these are just placeholders for you to see the numbers and to be able to respond to tonight. Okay, I'll give you that information here in just a minute. We can go on. Sorry. All right, with regards to compensation, you might be aware minimum wage has just been adjusted. So May 1st of this year, it's going to go from $7.25 an hour, which is what it is right now, to $9.50 an hour. We have several positions that are going to be impacted by that in May. But maybe more importantly, I just ask you to think through January 1st, which is right in the middle of the next fiscal year, the one we're budgeting for right now. It's going to jump from $9.50 to $11 an hour, and when it does, that's going to impact several of our employees. And so we need to think through whether we do two different contract periods, if you will, where we contract folks for the $9.50 an hour and then do new contracts for those individuals January 1st for the second part of the year, or how we handle that. But that change is going to come right in the middle of a fiscal, and it's going to have an impact of, it's going to have a significant impact on us. Yes?
Has the governor's budget taken this into consideration?
You mean in terms of helping us fund it?
Yeah.
No. No, there's no additional funding for this,
All right.
other than, what I shared at the beginning about wanting to support the SOQs, to support the increase in the at-risk add-on, and I think help from an SOQ.
Well, I'm very much in favor of this, that we, work on that minimum wage. How many employees does this affect?
I can't tell you exactly how many. I mean, I don't have it in my head. I'm gonna say it's about 20. Do you agree with that, Aaron? Yeah. It'll be significant. It's probably what did we say earlier today? $15,000? $11. It's about $11,000 to make that first
in May?
change.
No, next fiscal.
Pardon?
Next fiscal.
The move from 950 to 11 in the middle of the next fiscal year
All right,
will
but what
cost
about-
about
what
11.
about this?
If we start in July 1. If we start July 1 with the $11, that's the 11,000.
All right, but still, do we have some employees that are at 725 or less and need to go to 950 in May?
2.
Okay. So we can find money for that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that will be a concern.
All right.
We'll be able to fund the other. The question is kind of how to do it. But anyway, I just want you to be aware of that. Okay, Steve? All right, when shifting gears a little bit, one of the budget priorities is about equitable programming, and we've talked at length about this, so I won't, unless you have a desire for me to reiterate some of that or questions, I won't go on about the philosophy behind why we are trying to do intervention at those early grade levels. But we have exponentially increased the opportunities for us to do that, which I'm very proud of. I think that's a very wise decision on behalf of the board and our community. We know that we get more bang for our buck when we try to intervene with our younger students. I think what maybe we didn't foresee was just how much administrative oversight was going to be needed, particularly not just with the expanding the programs, but particularly with our coming on board with the Virginia Preschool Initiative, which we never did. And I still think that was I think it would have been, if you pardon my candor, but just financially stupid not to do that when we're leaving money on the table every year that the state would give us. However, financially, we were able to access those funds, But along with the VPI requirements came a whole host of administrative reporting, training. Frankly, our full-time elementary principal is really a full-time VPI coordinator as well. We're very fortunate that she's invested herself in those things. She's able to do it. But I would like for you to think about our reaching out to somebody who could help coordinate that, oversee the grant application and administration and the reporting, all the data collection, the eligibility, and the plan for professional development. There are all kinds of certifications. I mentioned the class certification, but I mean, there's several that the person would need to go through that right now Danielle is doing, observations that have to be made, working with the families, and of course, overseeing the whole IEP process, which for basically a little school within a school has gotten huge. And I don't think that it would be overwhelming for us to support a part-time coordinator to oversee some of that. So, any questions about that?
Is that a position where you could hire a full-time employee and do half-time this and half-time something else?
We certainly could. Yeah, we think that this need could be accomplished with a half-time person if the person had the right skills. But it's certainly something that probably could be paired with something else. Yeah. So at the 0.5 FTE, it's a position that, I mean, we have to be creative and we have to find the right person, frankly. It wouldn't come with any benefits, but it'd be a starting point for us. Okay, Steve. So these are some numbers just for you to have. For us to do a wholesale 4% increase to all of our salary scales, you can see that's a big chunk. That's $430,000. To do the step advancement where everybody just goes to their next year's experience, it's $147,000. We're conservatively estimating 2% insurance premium increase. If we absorb that and did not ask our employees to pay more, that would cost us $25,000. We are estimating at a mid-range, say like about a step. I can't remember where we were, 10 to 15, 12, yeah. If we conservatively estimate somebody coming in with a little bit of experience, about 37.4 on the scale that we put it on, which is a specialist scale. And I didn't assign a number to adjusting the support. This goes back to the scale that the bus mechanic's on, simply because there is a little bit of a domino effect when we make that adjustment that we really would need to think through. I just wanted you to be aware that it's an adjustment that we're going to have to make, just like we're doing with the psychologist, if we actually want to hire it. And then we're asking, this is separate, but I just want you to be aware because it'll be in our budget. The county, Dustin Harris and I met with the supervisors this past Friday during their financial work session to talk to them about actually giving the funding through the CIPs. This is not coming from our operating budget, but giving us some funding to support onboarding an architectural firm to start to walk us through creating a design for what the high school renovation could look like. The $75,000, struggling with my mask here. The $75,000 is really coming, okay, I'm abandoning. $75,000 is coming from my experience having done 3 of those renovations. I don't know that it would cost $75,000. It might be a little bit less. But I think the heart of that would be if they agree to fund it, we would do a competitive bid, and then we'd have the bids, and then we'd be going to them with a hard figure asking them to fund. So again, these are our placeholder numbers so that you know what they are and you know how much it would cost to do some of these things. The budget, I think, is going to still, the state budget's going to be in a little bit of a fluid state for the next few weeks. We did get what I thought was pretty good news from Jim Regenball this morning. You know, he always does a budget forecast. At least from the state level, a pretty favorable forecast about revenues. That was really good news to me. It hasn't happened yet, but what questions do you have for any of us?
So I read today that one of the delegates proposed a 4.5% increase for teachers. That's the bulk of explanation. There was no real definition about financing it, except when you're in the legislature, I assume the state's going to fund that. How, in your experience, how does that really work? Do we put up two? I mean, when it comes down to the end, we put up two, they put up 2.5. I mean, how do you think that will play out?
Well, with that, I'll use the one that's on the table. I'm glad you said that because I forgot to mention this. The governor actually has included in his proposed budget a 2% salary bonus, like a stipend, a one-time bonus for, you know, the language gets a little bit messy when the legislators people talk about teachers, and you don't know if they're talking about teachers or just people that work for schools. It's people that work for schools. So he's talking about school employees. But to answer your question, it goes through two filters. The first is those adjustments are only intended for positions that are funded through the standards of quality. So as you know, especially back in 2010, I think it was, 2009, when that adjustment was made to the support cap positions, or the cap was put on the support positions, we have a lot of positions that we are mandated by law to have, but they're not funded. And so those increases, so we have a legislator who says, well, I want to propose 4.5% increase to Virginia's teachers. Really what that means is Virginia's teachers that are funded through the SOQs. So you as a division have to decide, are you going to take that funding and just give it to those teachers? And I think for us, it's about 40% of our staff are funded through the SOQs. I'm looking to you for agreement there. So, you know, you're either just going to give it to a few people, or if you want to give those increases that the state gives to teachers to all teachers, you got to come up with a way to fund the remaining 60% of those positions. And then the second is those monies are often filtered through our composite index. So you remember I said for every dollar that they give to pay a teacher, we come up with 60 cents of that dollar. So it is a little misleading. I've not necessarily heard about the 4.5%. We did hear this morning in our meeting that the governor's 2% one-time bonus for us to give that 2% bonus to all of our staff, it cost us about $250,000 to get the 2% from the state to give that. We did hear today that they think that's going to, when that washes out through the budget process, that 2% one-time bonus is going to turn into an actual 2% salary adjustment that would carry into the future. But again, we have a pretty sizable responsibility on our own to get that.
Well, that's not really fun. Not for us.
It's a bonus. It's a bonus for 40% of our.
Yes, the state's gonna get, you give it. No strings attached.
Yeah. Well, that's the composite index formula is the way that works. The state, and you know, they adjust, when do they adjust that again? Next December. Well, they'll review it.
Yes, yes.
It may or may not change. Ours went down a little bit last time.
Yeah.
But that's the state's way of measuring the locality's ability to support itself. So essentially the state views Middlesex as being able to afford 60 cents of every dollar required to pay for education. Any other questions for us?
Dr. Gretz,
Yes, sir.
the
Finance Committee meeting with 2 members of the Board of Supervisors has been very beneficial. Have we set a meeting where we can go over these things in detail with those 2 supervisors?
We don't have one, but actually, Mrs. Sochek and I were just talking last week. We really feel like we need one. So I'll pursue that with Matt and try to get something on the books.
Many times they've said that the supervisors have said that is helpful too.
Sure.
Because they can, ask questions and see all the details.
Yeah. All right, well, we'll keep working on this, and next month we'll bring you some revenue projections and try to flesh it out.
Thank you, Dr. Gretz. The floor is now open for public comment.
Need a microphone?
Oh.
Yeah, take that mask off. Let us
Okay.
see.
First of all, Dr. Gretz, I'd like to congratulate you on your 5th budget. We appreciate you sticking with us for
Thank you.
this long, so thank you. And I appreciate the comments you made about regarding sports. I speak for numerous families who are hoping that that will be a reality. To some people, it might be kind of not important, but when you consider the whole child, I think one thing I haven't heard tonight is more about the mental health aspect of these kids. We hear about data, and that's important. But a lot of these kids, their souls are getting crushed, not only from school, but just from lack of activity. Ironically enough, the kids that can are going out of county to find alternative means of playing sports. So they're still playing the sports, just not here. Sadly, there's kids that don't have that opportunity. And sports is their one thing that they can use as an incentive to do well in school or to have a safe space or something that they can excel in. So I feel it is really important. And just as a side note, the high school that I graduated from this last week, their star quarterback took his life. He was a straight A student. He performed well on his SATs. Again, star quarterback, had offers from colleges. And from what they can figure out, it was the lack of opportunity for him to play. That was his love, was to play football. And he was denied that opportunity. So if that can happen to a kid like that, who seems to have it all together, I worry not only for my children, but the other kids in the county who don't have the resources that some of us have. And lastly, I would just say I fully support anything we can do to invest in our teachers, to acquire good teachers and then to retain good teachers. We're fortunate to have as many as we have in this county. So again, I think I speak for many families when I say anything we can do to get them and keep them would be appreciated. Thank you.
May I ask you a question?
Yes,
What district are you in?
district. Oh, Pine Top, I believe.
Okay.
Is that right?
All right.
Wake, I'm in Wake.
Time. Thank you, Ms. Ham. Anyone else? Okay, the floor is now closed for public comment. Dr. Gretz, do you have anything else you want to add?
There is one item that I just want to make you aware of, and I might invite Mrs. Murray and/or Mr. Dunkel to fill in the details, but essentially, we did a competitive bid process for broadband expansion, and we just simply need to go back out to bid. And because that's a financial transaction that ultimately the board is responsible for, we felt like you needed to know about that. Do you want to tell any more context about that?
Atlantic Broadband was our only bidder, and when they came to us, they also said, if you do this, we can do this for you. And so since it wasn't in the first RFP language, we're canceling this 470, which is E-rates and USAC's language for the application process for that funding. We're canceling that 470 and going out to bid again, including that language, so we can
We were not likely to get a bid from anybody other than Atlantic Broadband.
Not likely.
So just wanted to make you aware of that. It doesn't require any action,
Okay,
but
all right, thank you. Is there any old business to come before the group? Any new business? All right, hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Amy.